Welcome to the Insightful Player podcast. My name is Chrissy Carew. I'm the host and founder of Insightful Player and the author of Insightful Player, Football Pros Lead a Bold Movement of Hope. I partner with NFL players to transform our world to be inclusive, kinder, and more loving. In each episode, I interviewed NFL players and NFL vets who overcame tremendous obstacles to reach their dream of playing in the NFL. And I'm also a transformational coach. I empower my clients to embrace their dreams, to transform their world and the world around them. And we want you to believe in your dreams and encourage you to commit to them now. Humanity is in trouble. We need you. We all need to do this. We need to embrace our dreams and share them with others so we can have an immediate positive impact on making our world a much kinder place. We invite you to become an important part of our bold movement of hope. Watch this podcast, share it with others, and let us know what you want to see and hear to support you in becoming an insightful player in your life. Thank you. Welcome to the Insightful Player podcast. My name is Chrissy Carew, and I'm a business and life coach as well as the founder of Insightful Player. I originally created Insightful Player in 2009 because I was worried sick about kids and role models falling down left and right. Partnered with NFL players who are doing amazing things in the world and who reached their dreams of playing in the NFL in spite of some amazing obstacles they were up against. So they too want all of you to know, and especially kids, that you can overcome any obstacles and reach your dream, no matter what circumstance you're in. So we brought Insightful Player back so we can transform our culture to be more inclusive, kinder, and a lot more loving. And today we have on a very special guest, Kevin Reilly. Kevin Reilly is one of the very first NFL players I met when I started Insightful Player. My God, his story is going to inspire you. It's still inspiring me. Kevin played for the Eagles, and he also started off in Miami and ended up with the Patriots, but it's mostly with the Eagles. But his career came to a screeching halt because he discovered he had cancer. And he lost his left arm, a good part of his shoulder, and several ribs. And most people would say, that's it, I'm done. I give up on life. The opposite happened with Kevin. And it wasn't easy, but his recovery is enormously inspiring. And we're going to get into more detail about that. And now he's also an author, a professional speaker, and he's also a broadcaster. And his book is right here, Tackling Life. I highly recommend it. And we're going to talk about that as well. It's a must read. You can't put it down. So Kevin, welcome back. So nice to see you.
Chrissy, so nice to reconnect with you. And you're right. You were one of the first people that reached out to me years ago when we started Insightful Player. And I'm just great to see how it's grown since then with all of the effort you put in.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. And everyone tells me how much they love your story. So I still get that today, even though the book came out in 2011. So you're still inspiring souls all over the place. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. It's been a really nice journey. I've met a lot of nice people, and it's amazing to me, Chrissy, the feedback I get from the book. And it's made me understand that sometimes when I'm doing one of my motivational talks, you look out there and there might be 40 people or there might be 400. But on any given day, there's a handful of them. I'll say a percentage of them, somewhere probably between 5 and 7% that are really having bad days. And probably a couple of them that are sitting there weren't even in the room initially when I started talking mentally. They just weren't there. They were there physically, but not mentally, because they were, dwelling on the problem at hand. And we all have them as we go through life. And somewhere along the line, you don't know, you couldn't pick those people out from looking at them walking in the door. But at the end of my speeches, I'll get 10 to 12 people just lined up telling me their quick story. And they're very good about it. It's amazing. There's a line of people, they don't take an abundance of time, but they just want to let you know, hey, you did something for me today. And I'll tell you, It's one of the most fulfilling experiences. And then when I get in the car and I go home, it's also very humbling. Somebody would say, well, that's got to really lift your spirits and your ego. Well, it does lift my spirits, but when I get in the car, I think, oh my goodness, I has just, touched the lives of a couple people that had much worse situations than I did. Yet they got something out of me, and I got something from them telling me, because it makes me feel blessed at times to know that you got to put things in perspective. As bad as my situation looked at one time, it's not bad at all now. And I look at some of these people that have much longer trials and tribulations in life than I did, and I'm humbled by that. So it's been a great experience. It's been a learning experience. And I got to say, it's one of the most fulfilling jobs I've ever had.
Well, we're very blessed to have you out there, lifting people up. And I think it might be a really good time to let people know your story. So let's start from the beginning of what you shared with me, because it's just incredible. You're playing, here you are, you got to play in your dream team, the Eagles, which was your boyhood team. And there you are on special teams, and you were the captain of special teams as well, weren't you?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. I remember, just as a joke, you used to tell me that the special teams was like blue collar of the team.
No, it was no joke. They were.
Yeah, and you guys worked really hard, and but that was just like, it must have been amazing. What was it like to walk out of that tunnel the very first time?
Well, leading up to the tunnel, and I look back now, I was drafted by the world champion Miami Dolphins in 1973, and they were coming off not only a Super Bowl, but they won every game in the NFL season, the last team to do that. And that's an incredible accomplishment. And just recently, I've looked back because I went to the Hall of Fame induction in Canton this year, because Harold Carmichael, a player that I played with the Eagle, wide receiver, great wide receiver, was getting inducted to the Hall of Fame. And I wanted to go out to support him and be with the other alumni out there. We had a great time. And on the way back, it dawned on me, I never counted the number of Hall of Famers that I was in camp with for 12 weeks with the Miami Dolphins. They had 6.
Wow.
And I thought, number one, no wonder I got released as the last guy from that team. That was a tough team to make. But the other thing is, I realized what I learned in that camp because of the athletic talent that was there, and because of the direction and the way they hustled and all that stuff that goes into making a winner. They had come off winning a Super Bowl, and they were determined to win another, and they did. They won back-to-back Super Bowls. So you look back and you say, boy, I wasted 12 weeks in Miami in this terrible heat, getting beat up by these veterans because I was a rookie, and look what it got me. But as I look back now, it was a blessing in disguise. How much did I learn? It made me prepared that when I went to the Eagles, I was almost playing immediately because of all that I had learned down there, and it raised my level of play. Then playing with the Eagles, I get to play with the hometown team. Wow, that was really cool for 2.5 years. And then I end up in New England. I get waived, and they pick me up on waivers. And I played the last 6 games of the 1975 season with the New England Patriots. And Chrissy, I wanted you to know something. When I get introduced now, and they say I played the New England Patriots, the last 2 years there's been boos in the audience. And I have to remind them that I played with the New England Patriots before they started cheating. So I want that to be known as a fact.
I'm going to pick you up on that one.
So anyway, it was a great experience, a childhood dream come true, not only to play in the NFL, but to play with the Philadelphia Eagles. And I played 2.5 years with them, and I still feel, connected blood-wise to the Philadelphia Eagles because they were the team I grew up with. I've made so many brothers as friends on that team, and gosh, when we went out to Canton, I can't tell you how much fun we had. And here's another thing as you get older, Chrissy, is that you realize how special people have been in your life and were in your life. And, at 25 years old, when I'm playing with the Eagles, you didn't ever say to a guy in the locker room, hey, man, I love you. But, there's a different thing, when you get into your 60s and your early 70s, where you can't leave a guy without giving him a hug and saying, hey, man, I love you. And it gets back, hey, I love you too. And it's sincere. It's not one of those things that's, just a salutation, goodbye, or whatever. It's really sincere. And it's beginning to hurt a little bit as I see some of these guys, passing away. You don't think it's ever going to happen to some of these great athletes, but it does.
Yeah, that is tough, and the older we get, the more that happens with people we care about,
Right.
Unfortunately. So what was it like just to run out on the field the very first time with the Eagles?
Surreal, actually surreal. The very first time was the exhibition games, or the preseason games, as they call them now, with the Dolphins, and to be in the Orange Bowl, which was a stadium that was bigger than anything I ever played with at Villanova, with the exception of maybe West Virginia and maybe Houston. They had, seating capacities of over 50,000. But to see that many people in the stands, and of course, coming off the Super Bowl season, when we came out on the field, there was just goosebumps from the cheers. I had never heard anything that loud until the Monday Night Football game that I played against the Dallas Cowboys with the Eagles. And there's something about that just sends an adrenaline rush through you that I cannot compare it to. There's no other thing that's ever happened to me where I can compare that positive adrenaline rush. We all get adrenaline rushes when we're in fear or in trouble, but the positive in adrenaline rush, and never was it ever so dominant as when they introduced the special teams before that Monday Night Football game against the Cowboys. And, I can remember getting introduced as the last guy because I was captain of the team. And I don't even remember my feet hitting the AstroTurf. It was like I glided out to 10 guys that were setting personal high jump records, because the adrenaline, the hair was standing on on my neck when I got out there. And we were just pumped up and almost wore ourselves out in the pregame activities. And we went on to win that game 13-10 with a last-minute field goal with 3 seconds left. It made it even more special. And there's that old saying, you have 15 minutes of fame, and that was it. Getting the 13-10 victory over our nemesis, who had beaten us, I think, 8 straight times on Monday Night Football. I tell everybody, I was 25 years old. I weighed 235 pounds. I was healthy. I could bench press 400 pounds. And that night, every girl I ever dated was watching TV. So it was one of those really crazy nights that you say you just would like to hold on forever, but you can't. And
Right.
Then, as well as those highs are, we have the lows in life.
Excuse me.
It was a few years later that I participated in one of those real lows.
Yes, and Kevin, can you tell us more about that when you found out you had cancer?
Yeah, from playing in the NFL, one of the things that happens to you when you're a second string player, and I was back up to all the linebacker positions and all 3 teams that I played for, but I was a starter on special teams. And when you are not a first stringer, when you are not a guy that can, make a difference every week in the game, although we try, you are expendable. And so many of us that were second string players, and especially the special teams, many of us had a lot of injuries that we did not disclose, because if they had maybe taken you to the right doctor, which didn't happen often either, but if somebody said you're going to have to go on injured reserve, you will probably not be back on the team. It would be the end of your career, because somebody else, aggressive, waiting for their opportunity, would be able to step up and take your place. So I had this injury that I got, and it was in my rotor cuff area, and I kept playing with it because I could. It was in my left shoulder. And what I didn't realize, that every week my regular body would go to try to heal that area, and every Sunday I would tear it open on special teams, hitting the wedge when I was a wedge buster, when we had to run our bodies into 4 grown men that were usually the offensive line people, and try to take 2 of them down. They don't do that anymore. They made away with the wedge because of the injury rate for that particular play in football that has caused so many injuries. I wouldn't be surprised in our lifetime we'll see them do away with the whole kickoff, because you got guys running as fast as they can for 40 yards one way and the other way, and the collisions are getting worse and more injurious. So because of that, I kept tearing this rotor cuff area open, And what happened is I had the unique ability, 1 in a million, I had the DNA that I could form a scar tissue that was turned into a tumor, a sarcoma, and it was called desmoid. And desmoid has one terrible property. You would compare regular scar tissue to cotton if you had a shirt, and desmoid was like nylon. And the one thing, it was tougher, it was more fibrous, and it was trying to overcome the fact that the regular scar tissue wasn't getting the job done. However, it didn't know I was playing in the NFL and I was tearing it open every week. It wasn't the body's fault, it was my fault. So one property of the desmoid tumor that is horrendous is it never stops growing. And what happens is it weaves its way around organs and blood supplies and nerves, and it then competes for space in the body, and it can crush other areas like your liver and your stomach and your lungs and things like that. So it can be a killer, and there was very, very little known about it because it's a rare sarcoma. So in order, I had 4 operations, and the only way that they could save my life was to do a 4-quarter amputation, which would require me losing my arm, my left shoulder, and 4 ribs. But that being said, Dr. Ralph Markov, the best orthopedic surgeon in the world up at Sloan Kettering Hospital, by doing so, he saved my life. Now here's something that I know 40 years later from being on the foundation, on the board of the Desmoid Tumor Foundation, is that he could not have known about the microscopic cells that he couldn't see when they were kept sending stuff back to the lab to see if they had gotten all of the tumor, because they weren't detectable then.
Oh, wow.
And I had to have in that area, with the size of the tumor I had, which was probably a little smaller than a volleyball. Okay. I had to have microscopic cells that were out there that they couldn't detect. Why am I here today? And I can only say that I'm here because the man upstairs wanted me to be here. And after learning that that was probably the situation, that this is kind of a miraculous situation with me, I decided it was my time to pay it forward, to give it back. And that's the reason that I'm still here today.
Well, you're out there contributing so much to so many, and you're saving lives. You're giving people hope that have none. It's very hard to live without hope. And your road to get here hasn't been easy. You also had a tough time, back, when you were, after you retired from Xerox, or was it while you were working for Xerox, where you just decided to have wine just to relax, and then you ended up taking too many glasses of wine and ended up in AA? Another courageous journey for you. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, it started very, very simply. I didn't start drinking until I went to college because my dad owned a liquor store, and I knew if I ever got caught doing it, I could impact the entire business. And we had 6 kids in the family. I respected that. I probably saved some lives back then because I was all my high school buddies' designated driver. And, they were no fun when they were 3 sheets to the wind, I could tell you that. But we did get home safely. And when I got to college, it was almost like you had to drink in order to get along, and didn't have any problems with it until, post-surgery, when I still had phantom sensation, which feels like the arm's there. I went back to work too quick. I created all of this outside pressure that I really didn't need. And so coming home at night, I was a beer drinker, and then I was a wine drinker. And then, as they say, 1 glass was too many, and 10 glasses wasn't enough. And very, very simply, I was a working alcoholic. I didn't drink until I went home at night. Almost never did I drink, even in the company of clients, when I was taking them out to lunch, because I wanted to be sharp. I wanted to, I had too much pride in making sure that I got the conversation over, and I had to go back to work. I didn't want to go back into work smelling. I didn't drink at all when I went to lunch. I didn't drink in the daytime. So you don't think of yourself as an alcoholic. And when you go to your first AA meeting and somebody looks at their watch and says, shaking, it'll be 3 more hours since I haven't had a drink, in 24. And I'm going, oh my God, I'm not in this league. This is the NFL. I'm in the minor leagues of drinking, and then another person gets up and says, I've now gone 3 months without having a fifth of vodka before 11 o'clock. Oh, are you kidding me? And these are the kind of people that stand up and tell their story. So even the first couple times I went, I didn't think I had a serious problem. But if it's impacting your life, and it was, I was starting to have those hangovers in the morning where, as somebody said, the one thing they liked about drinking was they knew when they woke up at 8 o'clock, they were going to feel better at some point during the day. Most people who get up at 8 o'clock, that's as good as they feel for the rest of the day. And that was something, a joke to look forward to, that you're going to get better at the end of the day. And so I took it seriously. My wife, Paula, was very, inspirational and helpful with it, and said, I think you're drinking too much. And then I talked to some of my friends, they go, yeah, you could curb it down. So I decided I would quit. And I decided that after I quit, I was surprised at how much more energy I had, how much healthier I was, and how much, on the ball I was with simple tasks and getting things done during the day. So it was one of those things, hard to admit, that you're a recovering alcoholic. One of the toughest statements I've ever made is in an AA meeting when you stand up for the first time and say, hi, my name's Kevin, I'm an alcoholic. And boy, and they say, hi, Kevin. And they get, at least you feel like you're part of a family of people, but it's hard to admit that. It really is. But once you do, the rest becomes a little bit easier every day.
Well, your will and determination and you're like self-actualization guy. You're always reaching to better yourself and to be the best that you can be. And that's, let's rewind again back to after your surgery, when you had all those naysayers telling you couldn't tie a tie, you couldn't do any kind of sports, and when you went back to work, you ended up joining the racquetball team and did that for several years, right?
Right.
And then you learned how to tie a tie like within a couple of months. Can you tell us more about that? That's all very inspiring.
Yeah, in my visits to Walter Reed, and I no longer do it just because I feel they need younger guys, but 20 years ago, I visited Walter Reed at the request of our governor, who was a Navy retiree, Tom Carper, who's now in the Senate. And he asked me to go down, and I went down with a real good friend of mine, John Reilly, and it's in my book. I let John write that chapter because he was the witness. And when you go down there, I wanted to talk to the amputees, and I got into the rehab area, and there were probably about 8 people in that rehab area. And I started talking to them. And the first thing I always do, Chrissy, is I welcome them to the club, because it is a club. And, I want to be lighthearted about it. And you find out, fortunately for Walter Reed, because of the service environment, whether it be Marines, Navy, Army, Air Force, there's a camaraderie and an esprit de corps that you don't have when I go and I see somebody at a hospital that's lost their leg or arm to cancer. And one of the greatest training sessions I ever had was 8 hours of training, mandatory for me to return back to Walter Reed to become a peer visitor. And you really learn a lot about what to say, what not to say. One of the most important things that I learned is how really well-meaning people, family members, great friends, even the doctors and nurses, set the bar low for people who are amputees. Hey, we're going to build a ramp for you and your wheelchairs in the front of your house. The neighbors are getting together this Saturday. We're going to have it all built for you when you get out of the hospital. Well, I ran into a Marine captain that said, I wanted them to tear that thing down. That's not what I was looking for. That just gave me a sign of weakness. I'm going to learn how to get up those steps. And he did. And what happens is they love you so much, it's the empathy level that kicks in. So they set the bar low. And this guy had come into my room on the first day that I was really lucid out of ICU, and he set the bar low for me. And on top of that, he was a amputee from World War II. And I trusted that he was, at 30 years as a one-arm man, he was an expert. And everything he told me, you're not going to be able to play golf again. You'll wreck your back. And by the way, forget about jogging. Jogging is, you're going to be so much weight on one side. You lost 21 pounds on the left side of your body. You're going to be off balance. You don't want to be jogging. You're going to mess up your back again and your spine. You can't be doing that. And you'll have a whole lot of pressure on your right leg because of that weight. All of these great ideas that seemed very sensible when you took a look at them. And I said, well, I won't be able to do that. Then he told me I'd have to get these Velcro flap shoes that are pre-tied, because you'll never be able to tie your shoes again. You'll never be able to tie your tie again. And I've been able to work that out, because right after his visit, a guy by the name of Rocky Blyer came into my life by way of telephone. And here was a guy that I was friendly with, not a great friend, but he was a Vietnam vet that had no right being back in the NFL after he blew out his knee over in Vietnam. And almost everybody except two doctors that were just on the cutting edge said that he might be able to get back to play. Took him 2 years, an incredible rehab and some cadaver parts. But not only did he make it back into the NFL, but he's got 4 Super Bowl rings. So here was a guy that probably the only guy that could be the topper over this volunteer that came in, Frank, to tell me about, setting the bar low. And Rocky came in and set it high and said, don't believe any of that stuff that he told you. And I challenged Rocky. I said, Rocky, let me tell you something. I said, experts built the tie. I said, this guy's a little bit of an expert. I said, I think he knows a little more than you and I do about missing limbs, although you've been injured, but I think he knows a little more about that. And he should be an expert in this field. Rocky just shoots back at me. Let me tell you something about experts, Kevin. Experts built the Titanic and amateurs built the Ark. Experts can be wrong. And that's when he challenged me, that I wouldn't quit on anything unless I tried it a dozen times. And that was just the breath of positive motivation that I needed. And you know what? I knew Rocky was going to follow up on me during the course of the next couple months. And I didn't want to disappoint him. It's never bad to have somebody in your corner rooting for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. He was a tremendous angel for you, right? He really helped you shift your thinking, it sounds like. It motivated you internally.
Yeah, he left our conversation with, I want you to set some goals and remember this. If you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time.
That's something to remember. And it's amazing. Well, all the things you did, golfing, half marathons, a marathon. You did a big race with your grandson, Jake, I think. Yeah, it's amazing all the things you've done that they said you'd never be able to do.
I have to remind myself from time to time that, I'm missing an arm, because I can see now that people that were born without a limb or a, underdeveloped limb of any kind have made unbelievable, progress in their lives with things they can do because they really didn't have to unlearn anything. And one of the great, positives I had is I lost my non-dominant arm. I was right-handed. I didn't lose my right hand. And man, there are so many things I would have had to overcome if I had to go to my non-dominant arm and train it. And that brings up, talking about motivation, I got a little story to tell you about a Marine captain, and he was the first triple amputee that I saw. When I was doing some work for the peer pressure group, the peer visitor group, peer pressure and peer visitor, that kind of fits in the same thing. But they asked me if I would help the guys because I couldn't get down to Walter Reed 3 days a week to really be there for, an individual that lost a limb, because they would buddy you up with somebody. They said, we think you'd be better use because you're, working for a Fortune 500 company. If you could lead these guys into job interviews and go over their resumes and maybe do some role playing with them about how to do interviews because they've never done them before. So I said, great, And so going great with this thing. I love getting to see these people, these guys and gals, by the way. You don't think you're going to see wounded women. Well, guess what? Those IEDs, they have no, they have no adversity of going against anybody. Your Jeep, your dog, if you're a woman, if you're a man, they don't care. They just blow things up. So, here I am, and I'm having a great time and feeling very useful doing this. And I meet my first triple amputee. And I got to tell you, it took me back. It took me back a step. Missing both knees, I'm missing both legs below the knee, and missing his left arm and his left eye. Okay.
And his left eye too.
His left eye. And I don't know what I expected, but I didn't expect this guy to be Johnny Cheerleader. He just came out. His name was William. And I said, "Can I call you Bill?" He said, "Yes." And he came out. He was upbeat. "I'm looking forward to these interviews. I'm looking forward to you schooling me. Oh, man, it's so great to get out of the hospital." See, they can't leave until they're released. And they're not released until they can get through daily living activities. And that's like becoming a little bit of an Eagle Scout. You got to know how to cook 5 meals. If you want to drive a car, there's a simulator car down there. They got to go through all these things. And then they're allowed to go home and go back to life as it will be in their new life. So he asked me a question. He said, "Can I ask you a question before we get started?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Did you lose your dominant arm or your non-dominant arm?" "Oh," I said, "I was really lucky. I lost my non-dominant arm." He smiled at me, he said, "Me too. Aren't we lucky?" And I went, "Aren't we lucky? I'm not even in the same ballpark as you. Don't put me in your category. Gosh darn, you just inspired me." And that's the kind of stuff that went on. But, this guy was in that environment where he was being pumped up by the other guys in the rehab area. They didn't have friends and relatives come in and set the bar low. They were in an environment that set the bar high.
Nice.
And it's an exclusive environment. So that was one of the major things I learned, about this as we go on, is it's people that don't really have the opportunity of seeing what someone can do, when things get bad and what you can accomplish. You can't accomplish everything.
No.
I can't play the guitar, although a guy tried to teach me with my left foot strumming and this hand up here doing the fretwork. I said, if I was 30, I might try this again. I got too much life to live. There are things I want to do on my bucket list to learn this. But I think you can almost accomplish anything somehow, some way, if you really want it.
Yeah, perseverance is one of your key messages when you're speaking and in your book and your life, the way you live your life. It's just such a valuable tool that people need support with, to be reminded to persevere regardless.
Well, perseverance in my life has a lot to do with when things really look glum, maybe even devastating. And that's when I fall back on my faith. I'm a Catholic, and I went to 16 years of Catholic school. So I learned we've had our problems in the Catholic faith. I think we all would say that. However, I would say that the moral structure that I learned in all 3 institutions — I went to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, Villanova Catholic college — that never changed. And that all functioned on being kind, being forgiven, do the best that you can be, and be humble. And I can't say that I lived those things all my life, but every day now, again, as you reach, I'm 70 years old, you reach an age where you really want to embrace those things. You really want to say, this is what I want to do. But, going back to your original question, every time I felt like devastation, is the tumor coming back. Every time I went up to Sloan Kettering for 12 years, and they wouldn't bless me that they had, arrested this tumor for 12 years. Every time I went up, I could sense that it was back. I could feel it was back. I was paranoid. And every time I thought I could die from this, I'd say, I lived 10 years. I lived 8 years more than this thing. I could have died on the operating table. And why am I here anyway? It's to get to heaven. Okay. That's the ultimate goal. That's what we're aiming for, number one. And that has brought me back to earth more than a few times mentally when things get tough. And I think that that's the key ingredient to having perseverance, is know that there's a greater, a light out there, that there's a greater need, there's a greater motive, there's a greater target, there's a greater whatever that we're trying to get to. And this is just the game that we're playing here on Earth.
That's amazing. And I mean, you displayed that in so many instances in your life. And I know you speak about that. But I can't believe how hard that must have been every year after your surgery to go back. And it's like, oh God, please, you know, is it back? Is it back? I mean, that must have been like a nightmare for you.
I'm Irish, you know, and we've been known to negotiate. And every time I got in that car to go up there with my dad drove every time. It became a good luck charm, you know, every time. And I'd be looking up there and I'd say, dear God, just let me get through this next one. And I promise I'll pay it forward. And I believe he has, you know, helped me in that situation. And I believe that I'm here to pay it forward. And I'm trying to do so in not an egotistical way. I'm trying to do so in a humble way. I want to go out there. I want to raise people's awareness, motivate them. And I want them to really know at the end of the day, what are you here for? You're here to be kind. You're here to have a better life. You're here to use the talents that God gave you. How are you going to, you know, how are you going to defend the talents if you don't use them when you're standing before your God someday? You know, and last but not least, one of the things that was asked of me about 30 years ago, and I'll never forget this question. If somebody asked you what you stood for, can you answer it in a paragraph? Wow. And so, you know, I'll leave that with some people. Just think about this. If I was to ask you in an interview, what do you stand for? What would be, you know, your priorities? Tell me what they are. And some people have never thought about that, you know, conceptually. It goes through their brain, but they've never said, here's what I really stand for. And this is what I'm going to stand by. This is what I stand for. And I will stand by this because I believe it's the truth.
That's beautiful. And that's a great question for all of us to ask ourselves. And especially now, there's so many people out there suffering, you know, with what's going on with COVID, as well as, you know, with the culture divide and the anger. And you're all about empathy and kindness and inclusion and love. And what do you say to those people that are really out there suffering?
Excuse me. I first of all, I have to tell them that I am not the you know, I am not the guru who's figured all this out, and I'm perfect now, because 16 years of playing football, I was conditioned, Chrissy, when hit, get up and hit back harder. I'm conditioned. I mean, I was, you know, almost hypnotized into that mode. So on top of being Irish, I developed this: when you get hit mentally, physically, or whatever, you get back up and you hit somebody harder. It's basically, you're going to do this to me, I'm going to make you regret it. And that anger has not quite left this body of mine completely. Mm-hmm. I'm getting better every day. You know, somebody cut me off, I'd meet him at the next red light and get out with one arm, which I think scared the hell out of him, and challenge him. I don't do that anymore. There's too many guns out there.
Oh,
I can tell you 20 and 30 years ago, I would do that to challenge somebody, because I would think back of having one of my grandkids in the car, and you just not jeopardize me, but you jeopardize my grandkid, you know, that sort of stuff. But it's just not worth it. And here's the other very simple thing. Our brains can only handle one emotion at a time. So if you're into, you know, regret, if you're into revenge, if you're into anger, there is no room in there for peace, for love, or growth. Right. Okay, so why would you let somebody who you dislike, or somebody, you know, I try to not use the word hate, but somebody that is right on that border that you could hate, but now you're saying it's a human being, I can at least tolerate that person or what they did. Why would you let that person rent space in your head? There's so much life we had. If that person is renting space in your head on revenge, they're winning because it's keeping peace and love and all that good stuff out of your brain.
That is a very good point. And it's true, because they can monopolize us in our thinking and distract us and get us off our path. let alone not be pleasant to be around, right? And right, and back to getting up. That's one of the things I've always admired about you, is to get back up no matter what. And I know we've talked about this in the past, and I believe when we do that, God, life rewards us. There's always something that happens that's for getting up, for having that courage, for taking that stand and not giving up and keeping with that hope. I think life gives us, God gives us, our gifts come back stronger, our passion is fuller, and the surprises waiting ahead for us.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've learned over time, and people say to me, why did I lose a child? Why did I have cancer and lost my job? Oh boy, these are some terrible situations. Why did, on my marriage at 20 years go down the tubes? And, I found out that my spouse was cheating on me, which hurts worse, and all I can tell them is I had those same thoughts about why did I get a sarcoma that 1 in a million people get. Well, you know what? That wasn't my fault. That was in my DNA. So I couldn't really blame myself. Now, if I had taken a steroid over my NFL career or collegiate career, which I was advised to do on several occasions by trainers and people that were in the gym, this will help you build muscle, this will help you get bigger. I would have said, boy, what if I did use those and it caused the tumor? I would have blamed myself. So I got over that, but then my divorce came. I felt worse about that than I did about losing my arm, because I knew I had some culpability in it. But I also learned that God has 3 answers to all of our questions about why, or 3 answers to all of our pleas as to please give me peace, or please give me a solution to my problem. He says, yes, no, that's not good for you. We're not right now.
Right.
And my arm situation was one of those things, not right now. Chrissy, this has turned into the biggest blessing I've ever had in this life. God knows if I would have ever gone, what would have happened, even if I'd have played in the NFL and became a star and maybe got messed up, going down that trail of maybe steroids or drugs, or continued with my alcoholic ways or whatever, and all those things. No, he was watching, but I'm going to give you, I'm going to give you a little bit of a problem to leap over. There are barriers that are going to be in life. That's why you're down there. But I want to see how you react to them. And here I am, he's saying, I'm here for you. Just keep connected. I often, talk to people, especially the kids today, because they get onto this. I'll say, I just did it at one of the Catholic schools, Catholic boys' schools. And I said, you see this thing right here? It's the greatest technical invention man has ever made, except for maybe the rocket that took our people to the moon. And I said, it does everything. But you know what? If it's not plugged in, it's a paperweight. So Jesus in a parable talked about, I am the vine, you are the branches. And I use that to say, what he's trying to say there is just stay connected to me. I know I'm going to give you barriers. I know you're not going to be thinking about me every day for every minute, or even maybe you're only going to think of me about that once in a week that you go to church. But that's okay. Just stay connected. And I'm trying to get through to these kids that if you stay connected, he's going to be there for you. And he's going to help you to blossom. He's the nourishment that helps you climb up out of these doldrums, that help you get over the barriers. And then you don't use God or your vision of God for that reason. You're going to go down the slippery slope to what else will take that away from drugs, the alcohol, sex, those sort of things that you try to make, your life better with. And I just think it's a simple look at, why are you here? Stay connected to whatever religious belief you have, and trust that the man upstairs is going to do the right thing for you, but you have to make the right decisions when given the opportunity.
Right. So true. And if people could be reminded about that more often, that would be great, that they have it within them to make the correct decisions,
That's correct.
Just like the power of the human spirit, and the profound courage. of
I think that's
humanity.
something that you and I agree on this. The human spirit is stronger than anything that can happen to it.
Right. Yes,
And
definitely. And the
and
goodness.
and that statement really needs to, you really need to have that sink into your brain, because we really are capable of things that somebody would say, well, you can't do that, you know. And then you see some 80-year-old woman lifting up the end of a small car because her stepson or grandson is trapped under it when, the jack slipped or whatever. Where'd that come from?
Right.
I don't know, but we can do extraordinary things when we're put in the position that we believe we can.
Yes, absolutely. And I know that's a prevalent message throughout everything you talk about and write about, and also the goodness, that we all have that profound goodness within ourselves. And that's another piece of what you represent out there, looking for the goodness for them, not just you, but definitely you, but your enemies even, right? People that rub you the wrong way, try to find what's something really nice about them, right? Versus wanting to get into a fist fight or something, right?
You don't have to love them. You don't even have to like them, but you need to treat them with respect because they're God's creatures.
Yes, and definitely. And they have a soul. They definitely have a soul.
That's exactly it. And they're and we're all made in the image and likeness of God. So,
yes.
He doesn't make junk. We might turn it into junk, but we do that on our own.
Yeah, and the whole thing where you think that what happened to you with your arm and your shoulder and ribs is the greatest blessing. I mean, you're such a testament to that power of the human spirit, and the immense courage. And it's true, you're out there, you're like a modern day prophet, you're out there, you're lifting up people everywhere you go. It's amazing. We need more people like you out in the world doing that. And I just thank you.
Well, I think there's a lot of people. I really believe, Chrissy, there's a lot of people that are doing it. And I really believe that a lot of those people discovered in themselves they have, the human spirit in them because of the pandemic. The pandemic, again, you take a look at things, who would ever wish that on anybody? But there are some people that are coming out of this stronger, more goal-oriented now that they saw what life is like when it's not normal. Sometimes we take normal for granted, and that will teach you not to take normal for granted. And, some of the other things that are going on in this world, it's just crazy in this country that we've had these fires, out in the West, in California, that are unprecedented. Floods with some of these hurricanes that we've had. And then the pandemic on top of that, the opioid addiction. It seems like it's hitting us all at once, but there are good people in this world that are trying to rectify all of those situations, even with the climate change.
Right. We need to give them more exposure, because I agree with you. There are a lot of lovely people that are under the radar doing some really amazing things for humanity. And we need to hear from them. So we want you on this show too. So let us know, because you're insightful players in your life as well. So yes, we have to really cling to that. Look for the goodness. Look and go with the light. Go with the light, and pay attention to the yearnings in our heart, because God put them there, and that's what's going to help heal our world, by having you really embody that and embrace that and share it, just like Kevin is. Kevin's a great role model for that, and if more people could go inside and look for the blessing, what goodness will come out of it, just as you did with your cancer, as well as the alcoholism and any other challenge you had with your marriage. It's a wonderful thing to train yourself to start doing that. Because if you ask, what is the blessing in this? Sometimes you get those answers early on versus a few years later, right? Have you noticed that?
Yeah, that can happen. There's no doubt about it. But I just really believe that having a positive attitude when you wake up, and I went out this morning and there's a little bit of fall nip in the air, and it just brings back happy memories of going to school, the happy memories of playing football in weather like this. And it was really fun on a Friday night, in high school, Friday night lights. You bring back those kind of memories, and we can still make those memories today if we just take the positive attitude when we wake up in the morning. And the other thing that I think causes this stress in our lives is I'm convinced now that there's nobody that works harder or is busier than the American citizen. We are obsessed with hard working to get to where. And we've got to step back and say, we've got to take breaks in this stressful life we had to pull ourselves aside. And whether it's meditation that you do or, reading, just to get a peace and just sit in the surroundings when there's no noise and feel yourself breathe a little bit and figure out just what an incredible experience it is just to be alive and the things we take for granted, breathing, being able to blink our eyes, eating, all that kind of stuff, being able to move our limbs when we want to. There are people that can't do some of those things and we take them for granted. We need to step back and just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to take a break here. Some of the things that I'm really stressed out about are going to change tomorrow. We had a saying in my Fortune 500 company when things would get really tough and there was really a big decision to make. And was this one the right one? And I remember one of the guys stepped back and said, hey, why are we getting so upset about this? What are they going to do if we fail? Send us to Vietnam? And, it was kind of a funny saying because, what's the worst that can happen if this fails? And then think about this. Think about something that you really worried about that kept you up at night within the last year that is just a footnote and will actually disappear like disappearing ink over a period of time. It's amazing what we worry about that we think is going to have some kind of life of its own and follow us for the rest of our lives.
Right. And that's where your faith comes in a lot, you turn it over, you surrender, and in gratitude, which you're so grateful for so many things. And I think I think gratitude is the greatest prayer of all. And you model that so beautifully, especially when you're worried, just like you suggest, what do you have to be grateful for today? Look at being alive, look at the smell, smell of the air, the sound of the birds. My gosh, there's so much to be grateful for. And I think the pandemic is helping people be more reflective. What do you think?
Well, I think it's made them realize how much socialization means to us in our lives. And the lack of that socialization has left a lot of people depressed more than they were, or for the first time ever in their lives. I was fortunate. I've got 11 grandkids that live pretty close to me. And anytime that I was feeling down for a day, and it happens to everybody, where there's nothing like going to something that makes you happy. And there isn't anything that makes me happier than being with one of my grandkids. It's one of the few things in my life that I can tell you is unconditional love. I don't say that in the defense of, or not defense, but I love my kids too, but not like I love my grandkids. You're able to spoil them and they don't think you can do any wrong. And they say the funniest things. I have one, I'll tell you this quick story. Just a couple months ago, I'm out with my grandson, Georgie, and he's 9 years old, and he's Yogi Berra reincarnated. He's in the right church, but the wrong pew. And he has 3 older brothers to deal with who he's constantly trying to compete against, And so we went out a couple months ago, and I said, we're going to do some errands. And he's always effervescent. He just loves life. Makes me happy being around him. And I said, we're going to go to a couple stores. You're going to have to wear a mask. He says, okay, Pop-Pop. So about the 3rd store we come out of, and he says, Pop-Pop, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. He said, when you fart, it goes through your underwear and your pants, and you can still smell it. How are these masks helping us? And I said, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to ask Dr. Fauci. I have no idea. And, one of the things I want to, prove in this point is they think about something and then they think of the end result. Their minds aren't cluttered yet with all the things that come into play in our minds. Should I even say that? I don't know. Before we get to the end result, they're like, hey, what's going on here? I have a question. And they get right to the crux of what the issue is. And they're always thinking that way. So they make life very, very, enjoyable.
Yeah, that's a great story, and it's really funny. And you're right. And too bad we lose that when we get older. It's really too bad. So, well, I want to make sure people know about your book, and because that's a really must read. But before I do that, I just want to read a quote of Kevin's from my book, which typifies who he is, and especially if you're feeling down. He suggests give other people something to smile about every day, especially days when you feel like you have nothing to smile about yourself. And the impact of that, Kevin, is
One, I'll give you a chance to smile on this. Ask me how I'm feeling.
how you feeling?
If I was any better, I'd be twins.
That's a good one.
That will make anybody that you run up against you can see is having a bad day smile.
That's a great response. So, yeah, we always have to lift each other up, and you're so good at that. So why don't you tell everyone about your book? I have it right over here. Do you have it handy?
Yeah, it's kind of the rest of the story. It's a really easy read. There's 31 chapters in there. They're all short. You can pick them and choose them, but it goes through the ups and downs in life and kind of is a roadmap of never, ever give up, no matter what the situation. And before I wrote the book, I promised myself I was going to be as honest and open as possible with it. And from reading it, I was. There's some things you don't like to admit in your life that you have problems with, and I did in the book and told you how to get over them. I believe that unless you're, telling the truth, if you're fabricating or you're embellishing or trying to round out whatever problem you're having, you're never going to solve it.
Right. Yes, I love your transparency. It's so inspiring. Yes, this is a must read. I highly
That's the
recommend.
word I was looking for. Transparency. Be transparent.
Right, and vulnerable. We need to be vulnerable with each other, which yeah, you're a great role model on so many levels, and I appreciate this book so much. I think everybody should read this book. It's really great. I think it will give you a lot of insight for yourself and inspiration. So, Kevin, is there anything else you'd like to share with us today to wrap up this wonderful interview with you?
Yeah, the thing that I guess I want to leave you with is don't let negativity rent space in your head. And I think the best way to do that is just trying to do positive things. Say hello to people that maybe got their eyes down, or try to make somebody's day just by talking to them. And every once in a while, we get pestered by that person we really don't have time for, but taking maybe 2 minutes and just hear them out, you may not only make their day, you might make their week. Just be kind to one another and try to pay it forward.
Thank you, Kevin. That's really great. Yes, go out there and put a smile on someone else's face, just like Kevin said, and you'll feel a whole lot better yourself. So thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time. The entire Insightful Player podcast initiative is dedicated to the late Tom Constantino. Tom Constantino was my PR consultant. He was over the moon fabulous. He was really an exceptional human being, and Insightful Player wouldn't have made it to where it is now if it wasn't for Tom. So Tom, up there in heaven, I just want you to know you're going to live in my heart forever, and I am forever grateful for you. Thank you.